welcome everyone to the August 26th, 2013 meeting of the Board of Education of the Granville Exempted Village School District, and invite you all to rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you and welcome. It's so good to see you. So many familiar faces and some unfamiliar faces who have come for us to celebrate wonderful achievements. So welcome. And would you have to go the roll?
Sure.
But we have to appoint treasurer pro tem first.
Oh,
So
Do I volunteer?
we need a motion.
do we have a motion to?
Can I, I'd like to make a motion to be the president, the treasurer pro tem.
Well, you can, I can, if somebody else has a motion, yeah.
Somebody's got to make the motion.
It's new to us.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to appoint Tom Miller as treasurer pro tem for the August 26th meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Do I get to vote on it?
Yes, you actually do.
Did we do that? Okay. All right. So, Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Dees?
Okay,
All right.
congratulations. Now she can do the roll call.
Right, roll call. Okay, Dr. Corman?
Here.
Ms. Dees?
Here.
Mr. Janice? Mr. Miller? Dr. Rentel?
Here.
Okay. Just so you know, the reason why we had to go through that exercise is our treasurer is not here tonight. So you have to, in a governing body, appoint a treasurer pro tem in lieu of having the actual treasurer here. So now, Mr. Miller is our treasurer, but Mrs. Washka will be taking the role and recording all of the information as secretary, just so you know. So now I'd like to invite two representatives from the American Heart Association to the podium to start our accommodation. And they're going to award Granville the Gold Fit Friendly Workplace Award.
Well, thanks for having us tonight. Congratulations. My name is John Humphrey. I'm Vice President for the American Heart Association. This is Diana Yaley. She's our Local Development Director for the American Heart Association. And we're very happy to be here tonight to be recognizing the Granville schools for their achievements in Fit Friendly, which Diana will tell you about for a little bit. But to give you a little bit of history of not only our organization and our work with the Granville schools, our mission is very simple, but comes with a lot of work that takes a lot of dedicated people to make it happen. And that is to build healthier lives, free from heart disease and stroke, which are our nation's #1 and #4 killers. And stroke is our #1 cause of long-term disability in our country. And we can't achieve that mission and live that mission every day without every single parent, family member, child, and educator in helping us with that effort. In Granville, that has been a 20-plus year tradition of working in the schools through our Jump Rope for Heart and Hoops for Heart programs. And last year, the high school and middle school came on board to participate in our Red Up program during a fall football game against another school district that will remain nameless, but has the color red in their scheme. So, but it has been an amazingly wonderful partnership over the last 20 years. 20-plus years, and we're so excited to see Granville continue to be a leader in building healthier lives free from heart disease and stroke, and recognizing you tonight with the Fit Friendly Award, which Diana will now tell you a little bit about.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here to present your schools with the Fit Friendly Award, and I know I'm going to present to Mr. Gilbert, I believe, if you want to step forward. The Fit Friendly Award recognizes workplaces for their wellness, both employee wellness and also in this district for the staff and students as well. And you guys do a great job here with your physical activity and nutrition programs, and this is in recognition of those efforts. Also, I just wanted to make a quick note that the Granville schools were the first school in Lincoln County to be awarded this recognition, and the 12th in the state of Ohio. So thank you so much. And I'm proud to present this to you, Mr. Dillon, this for your district, and then I'm going to give these to you to pass out to each of your school buildings. And thank you guys so much, and appreciate everything that you do for us.
Great, thank you. Now, I get to talk a little bit about why all of you are probably here. So tonight, we start by recognizing a gifted athlete who excels in a non-traditional school sport, archery. Scott Sharp was a member of the Granville Intermediate National Archery in Schools program last year, where he consistently finished each tournament near the top of his class. His skill for the sport earned him a 4th place finish this past summer in the World NASP Archery Tournament held in St. Louis, Missouri. Scott shot 18 bullseyes, placing 4th out of over 500 6th grade boys with a score of 282. Is that accurate? All right, 282 out of 300. So that's pretty impressive. I think through Boy Scouts and Indian Guides, I might have hit maybe 1 bullseye. So, Scott, that's pretty impressive. So please come on up and get recognized. Good? All right, great. Congratulations. On a resume at some point. Make people think, for sure. All right, now we'd like to commend our perfect scores for the OAA and OGT this past year. Each year, students in the elementary through middle grades participate in taking the Ohio Achievement Assessments, which I'm sure they're all very fond of. These assessments measure what students know and what they are able to do and achieve in various subjects in each grade level. This year, 2 students scored perfect scores in the reading section, and 6 students achieved perfect score in math. So I'd like to honor the first group of students. 3rd grade math, perfect scores, Ella Lochbaum and Colvin Timmons. Please come on up. Turn around. Here, we'll move up. Okay, now stay up here because we're going to take a picture of everybody, okay? So come on over here. In 4th grade math, we have Brianna Rodriguez. Your grandparents are going to know about it. It's going to be really cool. In 3rd grade reading, we have Molly Fantini. Fantini. Oh, there. Yeah. Come on up. Fifth grade reading, William Schreiber. Did we get it, Mom?
Yeah, thanks.
All right. 6th grade, we have 2 students, Bjorn Ludwig and Kirsten Sino. Okay, math, we have Kieran Leyland. I gotta get to the high schoolers too, okay? In high school, the 10th grade class participates in the OGT, or the Ohio Graduation Test. This state assessment requires all 10th grade students to demonstrate proficiency in various subjects before allowing them to graduate. During the 12-13 school year, 4 Granville High School students received perfect scores on the math portion of the assessment. Tonight, we honor these students for this outstanding achievement. Ben Applegate, Danny Huffman, Matthew Jardell, and Michaela King. Please come on up. Ben Applegate, this is his mother, Karen. All right, now you're absolutely going to be in the picture. Thank you. You can be in the back, I promise. Stare right at Julia Lerner over there, who likes to take pictures of all of us doing great things. Yes. Scooting closer. This is what paparazzi feels like. So get used to it. It's good. Congratulations. Every year we start out the year as a staff, and we have an opening convocation. And one of the things that we like to do is commend Jody Van Tine Award. And each year Granville Schools honors one educator with a special award for exemplifying passion, caring, and excellence in the education of students. Jody Van Tine, the Outstanding Educator of the Year Award, was established in honor of Jody Van Tine, a second grade teacher at Granville Elementary School who passed away in 1985. This award recognizes the recipient who models Mrs. Van Tine's characteristics and philosophy as an educator, someone who has distinguished themselves in the Granville community by their contribution towards the growth and education of the students who live here. This year's winner is Granville Elementary School second grade teacher Jennifer Brown. Please join me in recognizing this outstanding educator. She has not only touched the hearts of her students, but goes well above and the extra mile for parents. So, Jennifer. Jennifer had one of the hardest tasks possible. She had to educate the superintendent's child last year. I'm sure a nerve-wracking experience, but hopefully everybody came out better for it. I know that's for sure. Yeah. Well, thank you all for being here. That concludes this portion of the meeting. You are more than invited to stay. But I understand that you might have someplace else to go, so you will not hurt the board's feelings, maybe the superintendent's, but you can leave at this moment, okay? Thank you.
Certainly. Great seeing you.
Great job, Molly. It's tough.
think so.
Nice meeting you, Julia.
It's 10 hours. It's in bed. If you've not seen memoirs, you have to go.
I'll have to go get it.
Oh my God. It is
Not so
good, but it's the pictures that just make that.
really. Oh.
Okay. All right. This takes us into the staff reports. I am going to briefly, and I do mean briefly, update you on enrollment. Typically, after the first week of class, we get a sense of how many students are in our buildings, but nothing really stabilizes until after the holiday weekend. And so this is just a first glimpse, and we'll probably do a more in-depth report in September when Mr. Sobel can do some mobility analysis and some other factors related to how many students are in our seats at this time. Mr. In September. No, no. Close. That's okay. All right, so currently, in our forecasted enrollment, is it working? You should all remember this graph. We basically have been looking at enrollment history and forecasting out. In the 13-14 school year, we're expected to dip a little bit. As you'll see, we've actually relatively stayed flat so far. So, and this is at the beginning of the year, and those are typically end of the year projections. So just to give you a base mark or a benchmark. Kindergarten numbers are up. We anticipated this because we did offer an all-day option every day for a fee for parents. So typically we see an additional 20 students between kindergarten and first grade. We are assuming that we will not see that bump again next year because most of those students that wanted that option have been provided that option. The only other thing from a grade level perspective, second grade, we actually were down 2 sections. A little bit of a progress is all about growth, overall growth, gifted, students with disabilities, and the lowest 20% in achievement. And then the graduation rate, a 4-year and a 5-year grade for students that enter in 9th grade. So we're going to talk a little bit more specifically, but overall we achieved 7 A's, 1 B, and 1 C. I will let Mr. Fry elaborate a little bit on the lowest 20% in achievement, just because a C, I think most people go, C's not very good. But in growth, C means a typical year of growth. So I want to say that probably 3 or 4 more times because that's the one question people have been asking me most. And we have some level of an idea of how many students that is in Granville. But again, until we see the actual data center for this year, we won't be able to report accurately on the actual numbers of that. So with that.
Can I just ask one more question?
Yeah, absolutely.
20% is across the state?
It's across the state. So it's not the lowest 20% in Granville, it's the lowest 20% across the state. Okay? Mr. Fry.
Thank you. So when we look at achievement, there are 2 indicators for achievement. The first one is performance index. I think we're pretty familiar with the performance index. We've been talking about that for a while. And what you see, it's pretty much the same as it's been, except that they've added a new category called Advanced Plus, which is advantageous for districts like Granville. What it does, it allows us to get a boost for students who are grade level or subject level accelerated. Which you can see when you look at the percentage of our students in Granville, 1% of our tested population in grades 4 through 8 are actually accelerated. So what happens with this is, if I score proficient on a test and I'm at grade level, you get a credit of 1 for the percentage of students at that level. If they are proficient and they're an accelerated student, it actually bumps them up to the accelerated level, so we get a 1.1 credit. If they score accelerated and they're an accelerated student, then we get the 1.2. And then if they score advanced, we actually get a 1.3. So that's a new level that hasn't been around prior to now. So it's great that that the state is recognizing districts who allow for acceleration of their students. Before, we were almost penalized because either they ended up in a grade level and didn't take an assessment because they jumped right over, or they would score advanced again, and although you get a 1.2 for them, really, I think it's fitting that they give that bump. So when all this shakes out, we end up with a 107.9. Now, technically a 108 is what you need to receive an A on performance index, but they made the decision, they being ODE, that they were going to base that actually on percentages, not on the actual score. And so this 107.9 that you see actually goes out many, many decimal places. So far, that it actually ends up being a 90%, even though it's just shy of a 108. And so we initially, when we saw this, we thought it was a mistake from ODE, and we reported it as a mistake, that no, we didn't have a 108, so we should be a B, not an A. And then we heard from Dr. Motley at ODE, and she explained to us, we didn't expect it to happen often, but it does happen, obviously, and in that case, they go on a percentage. So, and this just the pie chart that sort of shows, breaks down for each of those levels based on the performance index score. Questions on performance index?
So are the scores equivalent to performance index numbers reported in the past in terms of the type of testing and things like that, and the only difference is the advanced plus, which would probably benefit us?
Yes,
Okay.
you're absolutely right.
So it's a similar metric to what we could looked at before, and so it's
Identical.
great.
With the exception of the advanced plus category. So the next indicator for achievement is indicators met. And so this is nothing new for us. This is just looking at what percentage of our students pass the test at each grade level and subject. So you can see grades 3 through 5, we've met every indicator, and then also in grades 11 for OGT. So really, we've been meeting all of our indicators every year that it's been assessed. The only thing that'll be different in the near future is for this school year, instead of 75% being the benchmark to reach that check mark for meeting the indicator, it'll go up to 80%. The state's just trying to prepare communities and school districts for the bump in achievement that's likely to occur when we move to the new assessments that are a little more rigorous than the current round of assessments. But even so, we're really above even the 80% passage rate. So we're not expecting to miss the indicators in the future either.
And just to clarify, the state is increasing the level of the rigor of the assessment itself, going to the park assessments, but they are increasing the passage rates as well. So there's two aspects to that. So I want to make sure people understand that there's definitely an increase in the rigor of the assessments that we're moving to.
And we'll see that on next year's reports then? An impact
We'll
of that?
see the 80% on the tests that are taken this school year.
Right.
So on our report card this time next year, yes.
Okay.
But then in the 14-15 school year, when park assessments
Okay.
come on, you'll see
Right.
that additional.
And that'd gotta be a more significant change, right? Because these are pretty drastically different assessments.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Bring it on.
So gap closing. This is the first sort of newer metric for us on the report card. And the gap closing is measured through what's called annual measurable objectives. So AMOs are comparable to AYP, as Mr. Brown alluded to. The difference is, and we have the same subgroups that we would have with AYP. There are more subgroups than this. It would be all the major ethnicities as well as the subgroups that are listed here. We just don't have enough students in any of those subgroups to count. You must have at least 30 students in any subgroup for them to report the data. Anything less than that, they worry about being able to identify exactly who students are. So the other major difference is that there is actually now one target for all groups. It used to be sort of a weighted target, depending on your population percentage. That has gone away, and so now the targets are just set for whatever they are for one subgroup, they are for all subgroups, so it's across the state. And you can see that in reading language arts, the target is just over 83%, and we're at 78.5% for math, and those targets we expect to continue to increase. But what they're looking at that is comparing the performance of all students to this target or goal in reading, math, and an added graduation rate to the mix, and looking for gaps that exist between them. So we received a V overall, and how they determine the grade is each of these grade level, or these subjects and subgroups is worth a weight. And so they add all of these total points up, divide by what you, or take all the points that you've accumulated based on the percentage of your groups that met the target, divide by the total points possible, and they get your percentage. So we were in the high 80s, and the reason being is we did miss the target slightly for our economically disadvantaged students in reading, and then for our students with disabilities in reading and in mathematics.
Now, Mr. Fry, in
Yes.
No Child Left Behind, those AYP categories were moving from 75% proficient higher, okay? And the goal was by 2014, everybody would be at 100%. And so this is kind of a tweak on that measure, correct?
Correct. They're looking now for the idea that you're closing the gap, or the gap is not getting larger, so that each subgroup is scoring comparable to the whole all-student population of the state.
Okay, so in the past, that benchmark was 75%, and now it's 83?
Well, last year, actually, in reading, it was just over 82%, so it has gone up slightly. And then math actually made quite a big jump. It went from just in the low 70s up to 78.5%.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
and then it's added now graduation rate. And so you can see that the target right now is about just over 75%, and we're well above that for the two subgroups that we have for graduation rate. And again, you must have at least 30 students in a subgroup for them to count. So we do not have that many students when you're considering just one class, just seniors.
It's interesting that the numbers don't quite sound round in terms of 82 or 83 or 78. Are those kind of normed somehow, or how do those?
You mean the benchmark
Yeah,
that's
the
set by the
benchmark.
state?
How's the benchmark figured out at some? There must be some formula in there, right?
Yeah, what they're doing is they're looking at the passage rate for the entire state. And so the idea is we want all subgroups to be at the same level or close to the same level as what is the state average. So our reading passage rate in the state is higher than our math passage rate. So that's showing us, which has been common in Ohio for a while.
Okay.
Other questions on the proposal? We'll get into these in more detail also when we have our state of the schools later in the school this fall. So on the progress. This is probably the one that has the most publicity over the last several months. So within progress, there are actually 4 grades in this metric. You have your overall growth, which is looking for the progress of all students in reading and math, grades 4 through 8. Third grade is not considered in this metric on the report card because that's the baseline year. We actually are able to report growth beyond what the state reports because we give additional testing. That information we do not have access yet to yet. It'll be toward the end of September before that's released, and then we'll provide that in our State of the Schools address. But you can see that when they combine across all grades in reading and mathematics, we are above expected growth, noted by the green, and then when they combine the math and the reading together, we have, and through our all tests, we're above expected growth as well. That's what gets us the A. Then when you look, so what they've done now for progress is they also look at subgroups, but it's different subgroups. So there are only 3. The gifted students, so those students who are identified gifted in reading or mathematics or superior cognitive ability. So those are the 3 areas. On the simulations, it was slightly different because they looked at gifted in any area. They've since realized that that maybe didn't make a lot of sense to look at kids who are gifted in science and not gifted in reading, and then to be measured on giftedness in reading from a progress standpoint. So when you look at the gifted population, where our grade is an A, so that means our students have above expected growth, so it's more than a year's worth of growth. We can't quantify it any more than that. I can't tell you it's 2 years more, 3 years more. It's just significantly more than their peers across the state. Students in the lowest 20% achievement. So a couple things going on here. First off, what does that mean? The state actually looks at who are the lowest quintile from a performance standpoint, just in how they have performed on achievement tests that year. So So that bottom 20% in achievement, as you might guess, many of those students are going to be students with disabilities. Not all, but many. So they take the lowest 20% across the state, and they look at the progress of just your kids that fall into that mix. For us, we don't yet know who those 20, who falls in that 20%. We won't know that until the end of September. But looking at past years, it's around just around 7% of our tested population in grades 4 through 8. So where it's the state's 20%, really we're closer to just over 7. So we're talking probably around 60, 70 kids total. So more than enough to have a subgroup, but smaller than just our, than 20% of our population. And this grade is a C. C seems like a bad grade, but if you come over here and you look at how they designed the letter grades to match up with growth, it's different than the other metrics in the sense that to get a C, students must be in this range greater than or equal to, or greater or equal to -1 standard error measure, but less than +1 standard measure of error. What that means is they're getting a year's worth of growth. So if you're above 2, it's significantly more than a year's growth. If you're in this B category, technically that's just the high end of average. So they still saw a year's worth of growth, but it was at the upper end of it. If you're in a D category, that's still a year's worth of growth, but it's the lower end of average. And then an F would be actually significantly less than a year's worth of growth. So it's a little confusing because really when growth first came out, B, C, and D would have all been one category. They changed that because what happened was districts were seeing that they were meeting growth, all of a sudden not meeting growth. And they're asking questions like, how is this possible? The data can't be right. We've met growth the last 3 years in a row. What they didn't know is they were trending downward toward being below expected growth. So to help with that, they split this big middle group into 3 groups. So whether you're at the high end of average, the low end of average, or right in the middle average expected growth. So I think that'll be really hard for community members to connect, especially when you think about letter grades as you think of your student getting in class, or even the letter grades on the other metrics, which really fall sort of into percentages that make more sense. But fortunately, we don't have to explain a D. So, but the C is actually a year's worth of growth. So, and then the last group is our students with disabilities. And we have an A with our students with disabilities from a growth perspective. Questions?
Is there equivalence to last year's simulated data with the letter grades that we received based on last year's numbers? Am I thinking right? I mean, there were numbers that came out for last year's data. Is it the same metrics? Is it the same?
Well, it's slightly different in the sense they tightened up the whole gifted metric. So
Okay.
it used to be just anyone who had any gifted identification was in the gifted mix. So you were considered gifted in math or science or social studies, you're in the gifted growth for reading. And so they tightened that up now to be just if you're gifted in reading, you're in the reading metric. Gifted in math, you're in the math metric. They combine all, and then superior cognitive ability. And then they pull all that together to get the overall gifted score.
Yeah, so I don't remember the letter grades from the simulated thing last year, but it seemed like it was almost reversed in terms of.
Yes,
What,
it was
right?
math for gifted.
It was an F for gifted, okay, and the lower performing, I don't know that they stood out to me, but.
I don't believe this was a metric.
That was not a metric.
I don't
Okay,
remember
right.
the lowest 20% being there.
Right.
Students with disabilities, yes.
All right, so we don't really know if that's a population change or a reality change with the data, or just the way that it's measured, but there's probably a pretty significant effect of how it's measured. Right, it's a better metric now anyway.
Sure, I mean, our goal is to continuously improve anyway,
Right.
but obviously the overall grade of A,
Yeah,
this would be the equivalent of above expected growth. So what
Right.
we expected on the old report card
Right.
to have with distinction.
right.
Go ahead, Kate.
Yes.
I'm not sure if I missed something. When you were describing the population in the students in the lowest 20%, did I understand that you were saying your estimation of the population in that group for who we have in Granville would include many of our students with disabilities?
Yes, I would assume it includes all students with disabilities, but not all of our students with disabilities.
am I assuming wrong then if we have another category of students with disabilities and we got an A in that, and we got a C in the other category, which has most of our students with disabilities, is it simply that they're looking at them across this bigger group in the state?
This is a smaller group of kids. This is roughly 60 kids, where this is going to be well over 100 kids.
But it's,
Oh.
but what I'm saying is that they're
I see,
measuring
right.
those students against is different in each of those categories, or it's the same?
It's the same metric, it's just
Okay.
different kids. They just split the kids differently. So they wanted to look at our lowest quintile kids across the state. What does their growth look like? Because it could include kids who are not on an IEP, but have just been historically low achievers. Now, that doesn't tend to work out here, but that doesn't mean it doesn't work that way in other places. So really, when you think about the idea with the idea that you're trying to close the gap, well, one of the ways to make sure that we are closing the gap is that you have these students making more growth, because they need
Right,
to.
exactly, because they're.
If you want to close the gap, exactly, they must have more growth than the highest achievers, or the gap's only going to get bigger. So ideally, I guess from a state perspective, the ideal report card would be a C here. They're getting a year's worth of growth and an A here. You're getting more growth, because then they're actually closing that gap. Now, forget the parent, I think that, but I'm just saying, in the state, if you're trying to close the achievement gap, everybody's seeing your year's worth of growth, but your neediest kids are actually seeing more.
So the last two groups here, there's a lot of overlap for us.
Yes. Well, I mean, that's my assumption. I haven't seen the actual count of who's there, but based on what we've seen in previous, yes, that would be my assumption.
So help me understand a little bit the difference between progress and gap closing, because they both seem they're like a first derivative. They're both a change from one year to the other, but I'm trying to figure out how to think of them differently.
Right, so gap closing is strictly achievement. What does the achievement of this group look like this year?
Versus next year.
No, just this year against itself. So achievement this year, what does it look like for the whole population and in these different groups? When I split the whole population into all these little segments.
Against that benchmark.
Okay, so that sounds more like achievement to me.
It is achievement.
It is achievement.
Oh, okay, right, so this isn't,
I just said that the only way you're going to fix
it's the terminology of gap closing to me that
is to
is,
increase progress.
Yeah.
okay, I got it.
If we don't improve the progress, the gap will never close.
Right. Okay, so gap closing is just achievement sliced into categories, not progress, obviously.
Absolutely, not progress. I think that's probably one of the reasons why they went away from this whole idea of AYP, adequate yearly progress, because progress gave this sense that it was growth, and it never was. It was always looking at a new group of kids every year. So it wasn't following kids over time. It was looking at a brand new group of kids this year, and now let's look at your passage rate with another new group of kids the following year. So
Okay.
this is a better way to look at it. Progress is definitely the way to look at it.
Can you talk about the color scheme in the?
Sure. So, yes, great, thank you. So what they've done here is, so anything that's a +2 is going to be green. In this area that's a B, you're going to have, actually I don't know what color it is because we don't have anybody in that +1 to +2. The C is going to be a yellow, and then this range right here is the orange, and then the F is the red. So I haven't seen what the other color looks like yet, so we didn't have it on in any grade level. So, and we'll get more into all of this. When we see lots of positives here, we definitely see areas where we need to improve, and we definitely see where, although we're not quite where we want to be, the good news is that of the grade levels that have been below historically, they're getting closer to being at growth. So, there's definitely progress, but still more to come, and we'll get more in detail with this once we have all the data and so the state of the schools report. Other questions on progress? Graduation rates. There are now 2 graduation rates. We have the typical 4-year graduation rate that's looking at once they enter as a freshman, do they actually graduate again in 4 years as a senior. So we can see that well above the passage rate for an A at 97.9%. Now, they recognize, which is great, that there is the need for this 5-year graduation rate on 2 arenas. The first one is that if we have a student who did not pass the spring Ohio graduation test, but met all the requirements for graduation. Their test, although it happens in summer in June, you don't get the results back until August. And so it's too late to be a summer, although you're a summer graduate, it's too late to count toward that graduation rate because the accountability window must close about middle of July to be able to get everything turned around in these beautiful looking reports. So by having a 5-year graduation rate, it solves that problem. It also allows for the students who are students with disabilities that are staying one more year in school to add other areas. Maybe they're going to CTEC, whatever it may be. So it gives you, it doesn't penalize a district who has a student with severe disabilities that's going to stay one more year in high school. So you can see when we look at the 5-year graduation rate, we're at 99.5%. Questions on graduation rate? So then, the last few pages, there's just this other information there. It's not really accountable in any way. It's not an indicator, but it's just information just making us aware of. And so Mr. Brown had been referencing earlier about district mobility. This just shows you that we have about, last year, 3.7% mobility amongst our students across all grade levels. And that could be students coming in for less than a full year, students leaving us and not staying with us a full year, and then it breaks it down by the different ethnicities. And so it's not uncommon to have students come in and out of school from one year to the next. Jobs and parents move, things happen, and so kids end up moving in and out of the district. So this just shows you, you can see the percentages are relatively low, and they're percentages, so it's a little deceiving because obviously our counts, we're at 3% free and reduced lunch. So 8.8% could be a very small number of kids moving out of the district when it's only 3% of our overall population.
This would be net in though, right? Or-
No, it's in or out. It's mobility, period.
It's that one. Okay.
Then district enrollment, this just shows average daily enrollment, so 2481. That's a little different than how many kids are actually here. They do it on this average. It's how it's been done for years in Ohio. And then it just shows based on our numbers for enrollment and then percentages based on the various ethnicities and other characteristics. So I guess we're up to 4.3% last year. We've been around 3 most last several years. And then on the last page, there's this piece around wellness and physical education. So this first piece is on the new PE assessments that we just gave for the first time this last year in grades 2, 5, 7, and 9. And so there were 3 levels: high success, moderate success, low success. And they determined those based on the fact that there were 3 levels you could score on the PE assessments: advanced, proficient, and limited. And it was strictly on a percentage of how many students did you have at each level. And so we were at moderate success because on average, I believe our average was a 2.75, which put us still in the average or moderate success level. It'll be difficult to get to the high success. You just have so many kids scoring at the advanced level. So then we have the compliance with the wellness policy. We have the wellness policy on file. We do the BMI screening, body mass index, and then this participation in the physical activity pilot program. Last year, districts were allowed to participate in this pilot program, which was simply saying that you would guarantee every child every day had at least 30 minutes uninterrupted physical activity. We did not join the pilot, as many districts did not, just because we weren't sure that every single day we could ensure that there was 30 minutes uninterrupted of physical activity. Although I believe we have that, we just didn't join the pilot where we would guarantee that that happened. And then the last couple slides, we pulled the information for the similar district group. And this represents the 20 districts that are most like Granville. Now, these may not be a lot of names that people recognize, but this is based on Ohio's model, where they look at things like percentage of free and reduced lunch, percentage of your population population that's agricultural in nature, mean income level and other things like that. So you can see that when compared to this group, we actually fare very well. There are only a couple districts who scored as well as us, and no one scored better. Aurora City has an equal report card grades as us, and help me, Mr. Brown, I thought there might be one other.
That was it.
Close. Is that the only one?
Aurora.
Everyone else is lower than us in one category or more. And we'll report more information about the similar district group at the state of the school as well.
But there's interesting similarities in the things that we scored B and C, and like it looks like a lot of other districts also scored B and C in those. There's something about those metrics somehow that tend toward.
Well, one thing that you'll notice, well, we'll get to that in off the track here.
I think what you were going to say, Mr. Fry, is that when you look at Columbus and Cleveland and some of those high urban settings, the lowest 20% value added is actually positive for most of those school districts, if not all of them. I would have to look at all of it, but because they have a higher percentage of students that fall into that category. Again, we're talking about 7% of our population versus.
Well, actually, I think what we see in a lot of the lower performing districts is gap closing being a higher grade, seeing A's in some of those districts. And what happens is there's multiple ways, just like there was for AYP, there's multiple ways to meet that indicator. And so they're closing the gap because the gap wasn't that far in the first place. Their achievement for their regular typical students is not necessarily as high as ours. So it becomes harder to make up that gap. And so they have other ways to meet it through Safe Harbor and things like that, I won't say it makes it easier, but Safe Harbor wouldn't work for us because to meet Safe Harbor, you have to meet the target outright. So they have potentially an additional measure or way to meet that metric that really isn't afforded to us because we have such high achievement. Now, I mean, it's a good problem to have, so I mean, I'm not complaining. The other thing we pulled together is sort of a local districts group. Because I think, at least when I'm in meetings, when I hear parents talking about, I hear them talking about Bexley, Upper Arlington, Dublin, Grandview, New Albany. And so I pulled those districts in central Ohio that I hear people comparing us to. And then I also added all the Lincoln County schools, just as a reference point. So again, these were things I assumed I might hear from folks that they were interested in seeing. And so again, you can see that even with these other sort of local similar districts, that we fare very well. Again, scoring as well or better than all of them. You can see very few A's in performance index.
These aren't the progress ones though, right, that we're looking at?
Yeah, these are. So there's overall value added or progress,
Okay.
and then
All right,
gifted,
okay.
disabled, lowest 20%. I probably should have put progress above that, I apologize.
No, I got focused on gap closing and I'm trying to have this in progress.
It'll take us a while probably to get all the new lingo down. It gets a little confusing for us sometimes too. And so, I mean, one thing you may notice is Grandview Heights. One of the reasons we visited Grandview Heights is because we really think that what they're doing is really powerful. And we've had teachers visit there multiple times in the last several years. And as you can see, based on their report card results, it's definitely a district to take a look at. Questions?
Before you go into questions, a couple of comments. Obviously, this board has been very intentional about looking at other metrics beyond the old local report card that was based off of excellent and excellent with distinction. I believe why some of the measures that you see in this local report card are because of school districts like Granville that have always looked at other measures to set that motion of continuous improvement and get that moving. So we've had that orientation of continuous improvement through the State of the Schools report. looking at multiple different lenses and looking at ways that we could improve. And I think, it's a credit to validate some of the work that we've already been doing, but, with continuous improvement, we always want to look at ways that we can continue to do better. And, I think this is a credit to our teachers, our building administration, the Board of Education, and the community as a whole, and the parents, students, all working together to achieve these types of results. And that doesn't mean that we're always completely satisfied, but it is, a great validation of the work that we've been doing, and we have more work to do. So we will have more of a detailed analysis in the state of the schools that is specific to the indicators that you've set as a board, as internal measures. And we will probably have to go through a process of maybe morphing some of the metrics that are now in place at the state level to align our benchmarks to some of those metrics. So that's probably something that we'll have to do as a governance team in the future. And then there are some things that they still are not reporting that we will always report, like ACT and the SOAR value-added results. I'm trying to think of all the indicators, college readiness or benchmarks. So all of those things are things that we still look at that the state isn't looking at yet. Whole child. Yep. So now you can ask your questions. I was giving you some think time.
So next steps from here, when do you expect to receive the data that supports all of the test scores? Start to dig through that.
It's set to be toward the end of September. They're telling us the 20th tentatively, so hopefully that will work out. It will be the 20th, so we can dig into that.
I think in the past, the state has given us a look at the data prior to a public release. That did not happen. So some of the questions that we anticipate you asking, we would like to have answers to, but it's public now, so we're trying to do the best that we can based on what we know from last year versus this year. And so once we get into the secure data center and look at the actual students behind these results, then we'll have a more accurate picture to report in the state of the schools. Thank you.
I'm actually kind of impressed, like if this stuff just came out last Thursday, that we've cranked into it so much and gotten so much out of it. It's a lot of work in the last couple of days. It also shows that we really understand a lot of these things, and I have a lot to learn about them, certainly myself, but it's great that we have folks that can kind of see what these mean behind the scenes, right? And I've already kind of started to feel for the last couple of years, we're starting to really take action based on some of these results. Right, and so that feels good that not only do we have great scores, right, but we can also still continue to learn from them, and I think we should be very proud of, the performance of our kids in the schools for sure, but also proud that we're taking action to continue, right, because, and the scores get more elaborate and complex, and I'm having a little trouble understanding some of the lingo in scores and things like that, but I also kind of really feel like you were mentioning that it's not really about the scores, right? And whether it's a 78.9 or 92.3 or whatever it is, right? It's about the benchmarks, which are much broader and more important, which is I think where we always have a lot of room to work. The whole child metrics are so important, right? And all that we do beyond the academic test scores is really what I think makes this a unique experience for kids. So this is a great piece of it, and I'm sure we'll begin to learn more of it as data rolls out and things. But it feels good that we're, taking action based on what we learn on all fronts and continue to look just toward the kind of general benchmarks as much as any of the details and things. So great work.
I think Mr. Miller just took us right into board discussion.
Any other questions? Questions?
Yeah. Remind me again, it's 4 through 6, 6 through 8, and then 10, 11 is just the...
10th grade is the OGT.
Right.
And then 11th grade are those, it's what is the passage rate of the 11th graders on that 10th grade test. So
and
you can only go up from there because your 10th graders don't take it again. It's just the 11th graders haven't passed it yet.
And the 4 through 6 and the 6 through 8 are the OAAs.
Right.
That's what the data is solely based on. So
yes.
the major chunk of the assessments then are given 4th through 8th grade.
For value added or progress, it is only 4 through 8. There is no high school growth metric yet because there's a year between. There's no 9th grade assessment, so they're not going to calculate growth on 10th grade OGT when there's a year in between. Because how do you know where the growth came from? Did it come from 9th grade? Did it come from 10th grade? It's hard to attribute it to someone or to even a grade level. So that's why it is only 4 through 8. Now, when the new park assessments come online next school year in 14-15, they will start to, we'll incorporate these into course exams at the state level. We've already been doing this so that we'll have an idea of what does our growth look like in chemistry, biology, English 9, so they're specific to the course you teach, not this OGT math or OGT English, which is a combination of things. OGT science, it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little earth, a little space, a little life and physical. So it's more specific to what the teachers are actually teaching in that calendar year.
But I think the board should have a pretty good understanding based on our results on the ACT Quality Core and the results that, Mr. Bernath and the high school have been achieving for about 5 years. They consistently are at the top.
Index when we're able to calculate high school scores in.
Yeah.
If we could get value-added credit for what our high schools have been doing, for the last several years, both on a performance end and on growth end, I have no doubt we'd be tops in the state.
Yeah.
I mean, we're the only high school to receive the SOAR award for 5 years in a row.
Right.
I mean, so
We're number 1 in 5 of the 9 subjects, second or third in 2 others. So we do very well. So, and that's not reported here, but it will be in the state of the schools. Yes.
So then why so much is a thing based on 4 to 8? I mean,
It's just what we have.
yeah, just having, said that, it seems, doesn't really fully assess what we do.
And they're doing the best they can, it's just what there is right now. And so they know that, that's why there's more coming down the line. So we're going to have high school and course exams in the very near future.
And when you look at the state assessment system was based off of an achievement perspective. I mean, it was a criterion referenced assessment. It wasn't necessarily built for growth and measuring growth. So that's why they're moving to this shift to align so that you can extract achievement data and growth data through an aligned assessment system. And that's why they're going through this conversion. Is that accurate?
Absolutely.
Okay. Always have to check.
If we could kind of just continue a little bit, should we do discussion?
Yes.
I think it's interesting. I mean, it feels in a lot of ways as a parent like our kids take a lot of tests, And there's a complaint that I hear from a lot of parents, oh, you're teaching the test, it's just about the test and so forth and so forth, right? But I think the thing to really understand is like the actions that we take based on it, right? And it's not something that you see if your kid just comes back and says, I have a test today, or I'm getting ready for a test at the end of the year, or whatever. It's the actions that we take based on it. And the fact that we do map testing now, all the way up to 8th grade, we're going to do that, and we have so many more assessments in the high school, right, that we can generate quality information from. Right? I think it's really the important thing is like what you do with the test scores and not haggling over this, that, or the other grade or exactly what level it is. And so I don't know how to make those things more visible, right? And to make sure that we kind of keep focused on, the fact that we're proactively looking at this information and data and actually changing structures of classes and actually recommending kids go to different classes and so forth based on it. That's kind of stuff that sort of gets lost. You don't see that as visibly as you hear, oh, we're taking on a test today.
Well, and I think if you look at my, that diagram that I share every single year with you and the teachers and everybody else that is unfortunate enough to hear me talk, assessment is a critical piece of an instructional program. You have to align your curriculum and your instruction through the assessment system. So pre-assessment is critical to effective instruction. And so you don't want to give assessment a bad name, because that data is important to drive quality instruction and making sure that your curriculum is aligned. Because ultimately you do have to validate and you have to be accountable so that students know, we know, that kids have gotten what they need. what are they expected to know and be able to do? And do we know that they've gotten there? And so that's critical assessment data. And again, I think it's important to always recognize that behind every test score is a child. And progress monitoring, so that we can see a kid grow over time is just wonderful to see. So talking about map data, taking, different looks at a kid throughout the school year to ensure that they're growing on the appropriate trajectory is an excellent aspect of assessment. So, it's a critical part of an instructional program.
Right. And I guess I feel like we've always done a lot of testing, right? And I feel like in some cases, it seems like the testing has been for the score's sake, right? And I guess I don't care about the score. And I just feel that we're really moving away from that, right? And we're really utilizing the data that we generate to really appropriately place kids and to really structure, where we need resources and so forth. And so it's a very healthy transition, but it's going to continue to take a lot of hard work, right, to look at the numbers and the analysis, and for everyone from the administration to the staff to the students and parents to really understand, where it's coming from and start to feel like, okay, this is the impact that these are having on us, right? So, but a very, very good scores to be proud of, for sure. Yeah.
You don't have to.
I'm impressed. Probably sound like a broken record, but the results are terrific. Obviously, the product of a great deal of hard work from students and staff and building administrators, and something the community should rightfully be proud of and feel good about. Like Tom, I also think, one of the great attributes of this district is the test scores, the superior results are sort of a baseline. That's the expectation. And then there's everything else that comes along with it, the extracurriculars, the other types of developmental activities, the opportunities that we provide for kids, and those add to the enrichment of the whole child. But the scores themselves are superior, and I don't want to lose sight of that. I'm a big believer that if you're not moving forward, you're falling behind, and I think those test scores are one way to measure whether we're moving forward or not. And so I'm gratified to see that, and also gratified, frankly, that we'll look at other areas for improvement. There are clearly areas where we can improve. We certainly hold up well against comparable districts. And I think for us the challenge is how do we compare to what we've done in the past and continue to improve upon that. That ought to be our goal.
Thank you.
I think, just kind of reiterate pretty much what people have said, that it's we do remarkably well, and we should be proud of what we've achieved. I think it's interesting that the report, again, moving more towards this growth, the idea of growth and not just achievement. And I think that's something that maybe we want to focus on in maybe our communications, because again, seeing the progress versus the gap closing versus we have A's in some areas and C's in other areas. I think that's a pretty complicated or complex set of relationships between the numbers that we probably want to have a clear message behind, just that it's we want to grow our kids, continuous improvement. That's our mentality. That's our modus operandi in the district. So, but I think again, with I'll be excited to hear and see. It's a lot of information to absorb all in a matter of 30 minutes or so. So, but I'll be excited to see the state of the schools report.
I think I think to your point, even from a school perspective, in the 90s when proficiency came into play, it was all about hitting an achievement benchmark. And we've lived in that world for a good 10 to 12 years. And it is a shift, a paradigm shift to start looking at growth. Now, the high school and Granville started looking at growth about, 5 or 6 years ago at the high school, and now 2 or 3 years at the other grade levels. But it is a different perspective, looking at a kid where they start in school and then where they finish, and looking at your effect on those children. And so, as a school organization, we're still getting our head wrapped around that. And it takes some time, but I think it's important to look at both. It's achievement and progress. And that's something that Patel for Kids has been saying for 10 years now. And so getting that shift embedded into our culture is critical. Excellent.
In that case, it's time for public comments. Is there anyone who would like to address the board?
Kushon, 327 East Broadway. And last week I sent Jeff a message saying I'd like to be the volunteer for the school board's appointment as an ex officio member of the Granville Village Planning Commission. And for those not familiar with the history of the position, for many years the school board has had a voting position on the Granville Village Planning Commission. But for the last several years, the school board hasn't been able to fill it, or has had a hard time to fill it, so it's been vacant for several years, or mostly for several years. And it's a 5-member commission, and that created a lot of problems for the village. They were having a hard time making quorum in some meetings. So at the charter, the charter commission convened every 10 years, recommended abolishing that position. The village council changed it to converting it from a voting position to an ex officio position. And the voters approved that in November 2012. Last week, I was just looking at something, I saw it's still darn vacant. So I said, I have the warm body qualifications of serving in that position. As far as I know, there's nothing directly relevant to the school board right now or in their foreseeable future. But in the past, as you know, these planning and school issues have been very divisive and damaging to the community. So the reason that that position exists is to try to bring both sides together. And I think perhaps as an ex officio position, it can actually be more effective, because not only is it the school board expressing its will in the village, but it also allows the village, me as just a conduit, ex officio, to bring it back to you so you can sort of reflect both views. The position is only a 1-year appointment, and it expires January 31, so we're already close to 2/3 of the way through the year. So if you're going to do it, you might as well do it at the next meeting or thereafter, also if, shortly thereafter. Or if you already have someone else in mind, totally fine with that. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you, Dennis. Just as a clarification, we did have a person in that role, Doug Eckloff, and he actually liked the position so much, he applied for the position with the village. So that's what created the vacancy that Mr. Kushon is talking about. So when we selected Doug Eckloff the last time, we had a board member and myself go through an interview process just to talk about the position. So at your direction, I will set up the same process. So if you're interested. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That'd be great.
Thank you, Dennis.
Is there anyone else who would like to make a comment?
Okay.
CTEC board meets tomorrow, so I don't really have any updates there, and I think we're living all of our legislative changes, so I don't have anything else to report there.
I don't have anything on
The Granville Education Foundation met with a new group of trustees who's joining. There are actually 7 new trustees. We had a number of people that expressed an interest, and we're able to accommodate them all as trustees, and it's a fantastic group. So we had some existing trustees and new ones. The new ones, I can tell you, are Sandra Buffa, Amy Dell, Lori Fuhrer, Sally McClaskey, Harold Silverman, Bill Habig, and Jennifer Hercraig. And so they represent a fantastic cross-section of our community with some people that have lived here for their whole lives and some people that are very new to Granville, professionals from many inclinations, and it's going to be really wonderful to continue to be a part of that, and they do great things for our schools.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Don't have anything to report on the Granville Foundation.
The levy work is underway. The ACES group chaired by Emma and Chris Butler and Leanne and Eric Miller has spent a lot of time this past summer organizing, speaking to people, enlisting volunteers, folks who will take responsibility for various functions within that campaign. They've also been raising some money. They had an informational meeting the first week of August, which was very well attended. More than 20 people, I think, were at that meeting, and a good deal of enthusiasm, and I commend them for their organization and the enthusiasm that they're showing for this effort. I also know, I was out of town, but I know that they had a table the weekend before school started, when so right downtown, so folks could get some information there. And you know, if you haven't heard from them yet, you will, as they continue to solicit support for the campaign, which is quickly taking shape.
I went to the GranvilleAces.org website today and found it was really well organized, right? And so it's really easy to be able to volunteer, to do different types of things, and they've got a Facebook page and so forth. So GranvilleAces.org is definitely a place to visit to just kind of catch up on the progress. And if you're just willing to, you know, endorse the levy, you can endorse it, and you can pick if you want to do it in the paper and mailings and so forth. So I think we're really heading in the right direction.
Thank you. All right, that brings us into our action agenda. Action item 11.01 is the 6th grade discovery field trip that is up to Stone Lab at Lake Erie. It's one of their annual trips. It's overnight. That's why you vote for it. So I'd like a motion.
So moved.
Okay.
I think we ought to get to go.
You know,
It's so cool last time.
hey, you know, sometimes
It
boys
was
need to
so
take a
cool.
field trip.
You did go.
I did go. I had a fish heart on my hand.
Yes, we saw a picture of it last year, yeah.
I was supposed to go, but I got called for jury duty that week, so I'm kind of hoping that maybe the jury duty gets settled some other way. So then he doesn't get to go in my place. It is parent funded?
Yes, it is. Thank you for bringing that up.
All right. Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel?
Aye.
Ms. Dees?
Aye.
Thank you.
The next item is the contract with KidSpace Incorporated, which is our school-age childcare program that is run at the elementary school and intermediate school. So the rates are listed in the agenda.
Is there a motion?
So, I was going to ask how much difference, if any, is there a rate this year over last?
It is an increase, I do know that, but I'm not
1%.
1%. Thank you.
1%.
Mike inspired.
Yes. I don't want a second on that.
Are you ready to vote? All right, Mr. Janice? Dr. Rentel?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Dees?
Aye. Thank you.
The next item is 11.03. We have several unpaid leaves of absence that range from 2 or 3 days.
So,
All right. Mr. Janice?
aye.
Dr. Rentel?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Dees?
Aye. Thank you.
Okay, the next item is our appointment of the delegate to attend the annual business meeting of the Ohio School Boards Association. I believe that is over November 10th through the 13th. So we need to appoint, it's blank right now, but I think we have a volunteer.
I would be happy to do it again.
And we'll need a motion that includes that.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Jen Corman as the district's delegate to the annual business meeting of the Ohio School Boards Association.
Second.
All right. Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel? Dr. Cornman? Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
All right. The next resolution is, or action item is a resolution to deem transportation impractical. It's the first step in potentially offering some students or parents payment in lieu of transportation. So there is a resolution attached for declaring transportation impractical to 2 locations.
So,
Second.
I have a question. Can you explain a little bit more about what this is?
Yeah. So basically, in Ohio law, there is the ability to deem transportation to a specific location that we're required to provide as impractical for a variety of reasons. It's over a 30-minute drive. The number of students is impractical, maybe 1 or 2 students. The cost is prohibitive. And so in order to provide the parents some type of offset, there is a payment in lieu of transportation. So a parent can apply or ask for reimbursement or payment in lieu of. And the transportation department at ODE sets a minimum and maximum amount.
So these are for residents of the district?
Correct.
Who are not attending a district school?
Correct.
And the state requires any district to provide transportation except under
Certain
these
circumstances.
certain circumstances, which the district can obviously choose to.
Correct. So at the September meeting, there will be most likely another action item related to this item.
The parents then have to apply, you said,
Yeah.
to be reimbursed? Or
Well,
we have
after,
we offer that as
yes,
the option?
exactly.
But they have to request transportation originally?
Yes. Yep. They've requested, we've deemed it impractical. We'll go back after this action and we'll enter into a negotiation as far as the price.
Okay. Mr. Janice?
aye.
Dr. Cornman?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel? Ms. Deeds?
Okay, that brings us to our consent agenda, 12.01, A through C. I don't have a last page.
Nine.
C9, thank you. Need a motion, and then I'll discuss a few points.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have typical items here, the minutes, the donation of a gift. I think it's important to recognize people who have donated to our community. We received a $500 donation to the high school for their community service from State Farm Insurance Company. We have a couple of employment things to clean up for the beginning of the school year. And we have a couple of resignations from supplementals, and then quite a few supplemental contracts listed, and some recognition of volunteers and approval of volunteers.
Just come up as the events or the activities or the seasons come
Yeah,
through? So that's why we have them repeatedly?
Exactly.
Number 7, perhaps ought to be superintendent recommends acceptance of the following resignations or appreciations.
Yes. Thank you.
Ready? Okay. Dr. Rentel? Dr. Corman? Mr. Janice? Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
That takes us to our financial portion of the meeting, and Ms. Swashka is going to give the financial report for the month.
He was going to say Mr. Lawrence.
A motion? Do you need that? Mr. Janice is first, okay. Okay. All right. So for July, was a busy month in the treasurer's office. All right, the property tax settlements are still coming through. It's looking good for 2014. We just received the last settlement last week, Thursday, I believe, for that. Our salaries are still behind, or running sharply behind from last year because of negotiated pay and step increases don't begin until the second August payroll, which was the 25th, which was yesterday. And the cash flow projection for the fiscal year is not substantially changed. Questions? State aid payments are still based on FY13, and that will not change until October. And we had a little increase in expenditures because we paid 2 electric bill payments to bring them current.
Tina, is the expectation that we'll be back on track on property tax collections probably by next month, or is it going to drag for a little bit?
No, we should be back on track. We had 3 advances this last month, and then 1 settlement. Mhm. Ready? Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Dr. Corman? Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel? Ms. Deeds?
Nicely done.
Yes.
Thank you. Wow. Clock's behind me.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. Dr. Corman? Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel? Ms. Deeds? That was fast.
Do you have 757?
I had 7:50.